named player when they were 16. Well, it is, of course, just days since the ECB suspended Ollie Robinson while it investigates racist and sexist tweets he posted in 2012 and 2013. He's only just made his England debut in the first test against New Zealand. Although there has been plenty of support for the move, the Prime Minister has said he agrees with the Culture Secretary, Oliver Dowden, who has described the suspension as over the top. Well, let's talk about this now a little more with the former England batsman, Mark Ramprakash. Morning to you, Mark. Lovely to see you.
Very good morning.
First of all, let's talk about what the ECB have done. Let's talk about the suspension. Do you think that was the right thing to do?
Absolutely, yes. They had no real option. And I think it's a very sensible move by the ECB to give themselves time to think about, well, first of all, to investigate and to come up with a balanced and fair, appropriate punishment for Ollie Robinson, because clearly this is a tricky situation. I mean, ideally, ECB would have done some due diligence on the players that they want to select and represent, not just ECB, but the country and represent society. So these are important selections, and I think in this day and age, you'd look for an employer to do that due diligence. But I'm sure they'll have learnt from that. And of course, you've just mentioned that there could be a second player who is involved in this. Now, you know, we've seen in the current climate, things have moved very quickly, haven't they, in the last 18 months, 2 years, in terms of race and the debate about race and the sort of society that we want to live in. And the ECB have come out quite strongly and tried to put in place some new initiatives because for inclusion. They recognise that the world of cricket is a diverse place and they want to welcome everyone. And I think I'm really happy to see that. There have been some issues recently with the umpires, John Holder and Ismail Dawood, talking about race and not getting enough opportunity within the world of cricket. That has rumbled on. You've got the Azim Rafiq case going on at Yorkshire, which ironically, this links back to Ollie Robinson, because when these tweets were made, as I understand it, that was around the time that the Azim Rafiq case was meant to have happened, that some of the abuse and the environment, the racist environment that was around at Yorkshire at the time. So that links in, these Ollie Robinson tweets link into that time. So I think ECB are right to give themselves some time to investigate and come up with a fair punishment.
OK, so what do you think now about, what's your reaction to the statement that we've had from Oliver Dowden and being backed up then by the Prime Minister saying that the ECB have overreacted? How does that make you feel?
Well, I think it's very unwelcome. I think if Jofra Archer or Moeen Ali had been in the England dressing room during the match, what would the England dressing room have been like? It would have been a pretty toxic place. And I think that I've heard people express sort of sympathy for Ollie Robinson in this situation and sort of say things like, oh, hasn't he shown a lot of character? But actually, I've not heard enough about the victims. So the people who are affected by these tweets that they are aimed at, and how do they feel? And the sympathy for those people. They are UK citizens, a lot of them, and a lot of them are. But we live in a diverse society and we really don't want this behaviour. And in actual fact, there's a real irony, isn't there, with our Prime Minister getting involved. I think it's unwelcome. He himself has used racist language against Muslim people, against black people. He was voted into power, I think, on a very divisive anti-immigrant Brexit campaign, and race hate went through the roof during that campaign. So I think he's trying to bear undue influence in this case. It's almost as if his influence on the ECB, he wants to get some sort of outcome that he thinks is right. I think there's a real irony. If I was Ollie Robinson, I'm not sure I would want Boris Johnson involved and trying to support me.
Right, let's talk a little bit, shall we, about, you mentioned, didn't you, the schemes within the game, what the ECB have been trying to do to make cricket appear to be fairer, more diverse and a game for everyone. How embarrassing is it that only just the other day we saw England players in tops, as part of a campaign to tell everybody how inclusive cricket is, for this then to happen just a short time later, for these tweets to come to light?
Yes, I'm sure the ECB will be hugely embarrassed. No question about it. You know, you're there at the home of cricket, both teams, New Zealand and England, in the T-shirts, linking arms. But I guess what it does illustrate is that society needs time to change. And so the initiative was correct and it is required. But ECB are trying to navigate a very tricky time that we live in. I think the initiatives that they're trying to introduce are not, we don't want it to be window dressing. We don't want it to be just the appearance of being fair. We want it to be genuinely fair, because I think that all anyone is asking is to be treated with fairness, to have equality, to have justice for all. That's all that people want, and that has been the discussion. That's what we've seen, the narrative in the protests about race relations. So I think ECB, whilst they're not getting everything right, we have got to try and support them in their efforts to make cricket an inclusive, fair place.
Mark Ramprakash, thank you very much indeed. And Mark mentioned the Rafiq case there, and I just want to tell you what Yorkshire County Cricket Club have told BBC Sport, which is that racism has no place in our society or in cricket. We are hopeful that the outcome of this investigation and recommendations of the panel will drive positive progress and can be shared by all. Their investigation into that case is ongoing. Let's move on to the French Open tennis.